What's up, guys? Welcome to our breakdown of the Week 8. Crazy that we are already on Week 8 of the NFL season. We're going to be looking through the different positions. We're just going to be looking at our top play, value play, and pivot play. We do a full breakdown, but Ryan is out of town this week, so this is Scotty here. We're just going to kind of move quickly through this. We're going to do, a couple weeks ago, we saw the fastest 12 minutes. We're going to try to beat that time today. We're just going to look at a couple plays, each position, and go from there. So first, we're going to start off at the quarterback position. Our top play, we're going to have top, value, and then pivot. For our top play for quarterbacks this week, I'm going to be going with Jalen Hurts. I really like what he brings against the Detroit Lions. He really hasn't been playing very good this year. Having him as my season-long fantasy quarterback, I really liked having him, but as far as the actual game of football goes, he hasn't been playing very well, so it scares me every time because I think he's going to get benched potentially. But you know what? So here we are, Week 8, still going. And as long as he's going, especially against this Detroit team, I think he has a lot of upside, a lot of rushing upside. Obviously, he's going to be my top play of the week, also like Josh Allen at the top play. But we're going to go with Jalen Hurts, sticking with that. My value play for this week in the quarterback position is going to be Geno Smith. Jacksonville's defense is very bad. We obviously have not seen any good plays or good games out of Geno Smith since Russell Wilson did go down with that injury. But then again, he has gone against the Rams, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the New Orleans Saints. I think a lot of people are going to be down on him this week just because they haven't really seen that production out of him yet. And here we are going up against Jacksonville, who is a garbage defense. I really like that play there for your value play. And then the pivot, also in this game, the Seahawks don't have a very good defense as well, so let's pivot over to Trevor Lawrence, who is coming in at under 5% owned, according to Fantasy Pros, for GPP plays on DraftKings. So we're going to like what we see out of Trevor Lawrence when he does play against bad defenses. Tennessee was able to get to 22 points. And also week 1 against Houston, he was able to get to 25. So recapping, top play, we like Jalen Hurts. Value play, we like Geno Smith. Pivot play, we like Trevor Lawrence for the quarterback position. We're going to move over now into the running back position, going super fast through these again. Top play of the week we like is Austin Eckler. As long as Austin Eckler is playing, I think he's going to have a monster game against New England. I really don't like much of the others as far as Derrick Henry or Alvin Kamara going up against those two stout run defenses. So I'm going to like Austin Eckler as the top running back play this week. We're going to do 2 top running back plays just because you need 2 spots. And so we're going to also look at Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is somebody who has been able to have some good games as well against some bad defenses. You see Detroit 2 weeks ago, he was able to get to 26 points. A lot of people are worried about Samaje Perine going into those runs, the rushing attempts. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think you're also going to see a lot of pass catching on a Joe Mixon in this game against the Jets and be able to run the ball as well once they do securely get that lead. We're going to be talking about that later kind of with some of the other plays as well. So Joe Mixon and Austin Eckler, top plays of the week. The value play of the week, if you can get Justin Jackson, if Austin Eckler does in fact go down, I really like Justin Jackson this week because I like Austin Eckler. And he kind of brings a similar skill set, obviously not as good of a player, but if you are going to be able to get that value of having Eckler out of the game, obviously his backup, Justin Jackson, should be in a good spot against this New England defense who really hasn't been as good against the run. Their secondary is pretty solid. So you can be able to get some of that pass catching as well, though, kind of in that intermediate range where you're not having to go against those cornerbacks who have been solid, even though they did just lose, I believe it was Jonathan Jones. Another value play that I like this week, this one isn't going to be much of a surprise to many people, but Kenneth Gainwell. I think Gainwell is the play over Boston Scott this year just because, or this week, now that Sanders is out of the lineup. I think just Gainwell has been seeing more production. Last week we saw that he was able to get involved. He had 8 targets. That's what you love to see. He's always kind of been that main pass catching back, even with Sanders in the lineup. That was kind of what Gainwell was able to come in and be that third down back for the Eagles. You have that again. You gotta like that upside going up against Detroit. Pair that with Hurts, and you are going to have a good stack there where you have a pass-catching running back and a quarterback who could be the number 1 guy on the slate this week. And then our pivot, as far as somebody who's going to be less than 5% owned, we're going to look at Elijah Mitchell. He is going, if we can spell it right. Oh, that's right. It's just Eli Mitchell on here. But Eli Mitchell coming off great game last week. He didn't play for 2 weeks, and it's kind of been spotty there. But when he has played, when he has gotten the carries, great ththings have happened. We talked about earlier how we don't necessarily like Derrick Henry because Indianapolis has a pretty solid run defense. Well, he ran all over them, even though Chicago is going to be another team that is going to be pretty stout against the run. I do like this play, and it's why he's lower owned, and it's not necessarily a top play, but I do like this play because I think San Francisco does be able to get ahead against Chicago, and they're able to run the ball. They're able to feed Elijah Mitchell those carries so that he can get going on the ground. I mean, we see the average carries, if you take out the Philadelphia game, we're looking at around 5.3, 5.4 yards per carry, which is really, really good. And so we like to see that, and especially if we're getting around that 17, 18, 19 carries, as you see there. So I really like Elijah Mitchell as a pivot play this week for the running back spot. Moving on, we're going to go into the wide receivers. My top 2 plays for the wide receivers. One is going to be Stephon Diggs. The Buffalo Bills, when Josh Allen has been the quarterback, has just completely owned Miami. We haven't necessarily seen it all come together. We saw a little bit of a glimpse last week and then a little bit against Houston. First game against Miami was only 16 points for Diggs, but we still haven't seen that big breakout game. I like week 8 as that week coming off of the bye week for the Bills. Obviously didn't play last week. So I think if you're able to go up against Miami, who even Xavier Howard hasn't been able to produce very well on the defensive side like he is used to. So I think Stephon Diggs can own that matchup and find the end zone a couple times this week. I mean, he only has 2 touchdowns so far this year. I think Josh Allen, especially coming out of the bye, they make that a point of emphasis to get Stephon Diggs more involved because obviously you want your star to be a star in that passing game. Second top play that we're going to do this week is going to be Deebo Samuel, coming off of a string of just a couple of good games where he had the 38, the 16, and then the 25. Chicago secondary has not been what it used to be at all. And we really see that Deebo Samuels has been able to be the one that's getting the targets. As you see, I mean, he's 12, 8, 10, 13, 9, 11. He's getting the targets. You like to see that he's also getting yards. It's not like he's just kind of being like the Jalen Waddle type where he's getting a lot of targets and he only has 50 yards at the end of the game. He's getting over that 100-yard threshold that you need to get those extra points in DK. So I really like the play this week as well at 7,400. I mean, his price has gone up since the first game at 5,900. If you were able to get him there, that was a steal. But I still like Deebo Samuel this week as one of my top wide receiver plays from the top guys. Some of the value plays that I like to see. One is going to be Jarvis Landry, who hasn't necessarily been producing the way that we hoped. But, I mean, if you look at the Browns wide receiver core, you are going to see that they are pretty banged up. Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to be out. We don't know the status on Odell Beckham yet. If he's not going to be able to play, that's going to be another tough out for him. And the Steelers secondary, I mean, as well as the Steelers defense has been playing, they have been able to give up either big plays or just consistent yards to wide receivers. And so I do think that if you are able to get Jarvis Landry into your lineups, I think he's going to be a solid value play. And then also who I maybe like even more than Jarvis Landry as far as a value play is going to be Chester Rogers. You do have Julio Jones out, and in games where Julio Jones has been out, you see the 11 yards or the 11 points, 4.5. You don't see necessarily the usage. Julio was back against the Bills. But coming off of the bye week, it's going to have to be somebody other than A.J. Brown. And I think it's going to be Chester Rogers. Maybe it's Josh Reynolds, and we've seen a little bit more production on the big side. But again, that was against the Jets. So I do think either Chester Rogers or Josh Reynolds is going to be that guy who's going to have to step up now that Julio Jones is going to be out of this game, going up against an Indianapolis secondary. I talked about the stout run, but the secondary is riddled with injuries. They just also lost their safety Blackman as well. So it's going to be a spot where I really like the wide receivers for Tennessee. So I like A.J. Brown as well. But as far as the value play, one of those second guys, you're going to have to kind of spin the wheel and guess. But I think it's going to be Rodgers or Arnold if I was going to have to guess. And then finally, my pivot play as far as a guy who's less than 5% owned according to Fantasy Pros, we are going to be looking at Marvin Jones Jr. Last week he had 26 coming out after 2 rough games. I apologize, 2 weeks ago. because they had the bye week. And so I really like Marvin Jones Jr. this game because I like Trevor Lawrence. And I think whenever you've seen Trevor Lawrence have a good game, you also see Marvin Jones Jr. have a good game. And this is a defense that can definitely expose that. And again, if we're able to get to the 100-point mark, and you do see the targets are there for him as well, I think that's a strong pivot, especially one that's going to be low owned. Okay, we're going to move over into the tight ends, and then we'll wrap it up with defense. Kyle Pitts, obviously, is going to be my top play. I think he's just a monster. He's finally becoming exactly what we thought he was going to be. He's had 25 or more, 26 or more over in the last 2 games. So I really like that. You're seeing the targets, you're seeing the yards. It's kind of all starting to come together. He was able to get 26 points last week off of 0 touchdowns. You got to love that going up against Carolina, who is a solid defense. There's not going to sugarcoat that, but I think the ball's got to go somewhere in Atlanta. Calvin Ridley hasn't necessarily been producing. He did fairly decent last week against the Dolphins, but I do like Kyle Pitts this week, who's just been racking up the yards more and more each game as the season's going on. He's getting more and more comfortable in that role. The next play that I like, again, going back to Jacksonville and that matchup that they have, I really do like Dan Arnold out of Jacksonville, just because, again, he's kind of been that safety blanket for Trevor Lawrence, and he is somebody who is going to be coming in a little bit less owned, so I like that as well. I mean, you see the 8 targets against Tennessee, you see 5 against Miami, so if we're able to get a little bit more usage for Dan Arnold this week against Seattle, I really like that, as Seattle has not been very good against tight ends this week. I mean, they fall pretty much middle of the pack, but I think a lot of that is just kind of because of who they've played. I think they're worse than what their stats show against that, with Jamal Adams now kind of moving more into the blitzing role than the coverage role. I think you're going to see more open up for the tight ends there, especially if they're trying to blitz more, and Lawrence has to get it out quicker to that safety net. And then finally, our pivot, it was almost surprising to see that this was a pivot because I thought he was going to be higher owned. But CJ Uzomah, just maybe because people don't know the name as much. But I mean, this man has been catching touchdowns. And yes, we don't necessarily love touchdown dependence tight ends. But he is getting the targets. He in the red zone, I should say. And also he's getting the big play on whenever it's kind of like a 3rd and short and they do the fake run or the play action, he is being able to flip out and see those big yards, and so he has been able to take advantage of it. Again, he's coming in at 37, so I'm not saying you're banking on 15 points out of Uzomah and you're going to get that for sure, but he does have that big play potential, and he does have the ability to get those touchdowns as Burrow's starting to see more and more that this guy is somebody who is becoming more and more reliable. And then finally, we're going to go into defense. Top defense this week, I think it's going to be the Rams. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't think anybody's going to kind of be debating that. Last week, I was hoping for a better game against Detroit. But this week, going up against Houston, I really like their defense there. The value play that we're going to be going with this week is going to be the Falcons. I think Sam Darnold has looked pretty bad this week, or these last couple weeks, I should say. And so I think the Falcons defense, they're not very good in their own right, but I think if we're able to get a couple of interceptions just based off of Sam Darnold's mistakes, I think you are going to be able to see some points there for them. And then finally, we're going to go with our pivot. I like the Bengals going up against the Jets. I think they're going to be able to give it's not going to be Zach Wilson this week even, so I think it's going to be Mike White. I apologize for stopping there for a second to think about that. But yeah, the Bengals should be able, they've been a pretty strong defense. They haven't necessarily put the points up that you would like to see so far, but I think going up against Mike White, I think you are going to be able to get a pretty solid showing out of the Bengals defense this week, coming in at 3,600. So those are the plays. If you guys have any kind of questions, comments, or who do you guys think are as far as the top value in pivot plays for each position, leave those in the comments. We'll interact with that and see. We'll also have our hands down DFS lineup. I got to talk with Ryan before I can make that go live, because we obviously want to make sure that you are getting the best information there. So we'll get that lineup up for you. Follow us at hands down DFS on Twitter, and then we're also going to be launching a TikTok account shortly, hopefully, so that we can kind of get some prize picks and some quicker content up for you there as far as when the NBA season is now kind of going into full effect. So hopefully we should get that up shortly. Trying to work on kind of polishing that out and see what we want that to look like. So exciting things coming. Thanks, guys, for listening. Have a good one.